He thought she'd stay quiet. Big mistake. Watch one move, flip the whole script, right in public. Watch till the end, hit subscribe and like, and drop your location in the comments. A woman at the bar half turned, the glass in her hand barely rippling. The man behind her, leather vest, sunburnt forearms, a ringed tattoo like a target on his shoulder, had swung for a humiliating slap and found air. Chairs scraped, dice stopped clattering. The jukebox's steel guitar hung on a trembling note that suddenly felt too bright for the room. The bar was called the Old Crossin', a two-lane place with plank floors that remembered boots and spilled beer. Neon washed the bottles, and a camera over the cash register blinked its red heartbeat into the mirror. In that mirror, everyone could see what was about to happen. The man's open hand suspended where the woman's hip had been a breath ago, the woman's eyes level, steady, not surprised. The cluster of men in identical vests fanning out like a weather front. No one said anything. The room did what rooms do when a script most people know is about to be played. It held its breath. "Come here, sexy girl," the man sneered, low enough to sound private and loud enough to be heard. "Don't be shy. Don't ruin the vibe." The woman set her drink down without looking at him. Clear liquid, rocks, a lemon wedge pressed to the glass. "Step back," she said. Calm voice, straight shoulders, white tank top, light denim that didn't give the room anything it hadn't already taken. She didn't glance around for help, didn't reach for her phone, didn't fidget with her keys. She simply asked once. The man grinned like a curtain rising. "Ain't nobody telling Bulldog where to stand." He leaned, forearm braced on the bar as if he owned the oak. His friends smirked behind him. One tapped his knuckles on a stool, metal to wood, a flat metronome for bad ideas. Bulldog reached again. The woman moved like she'd rehearsed the next beat in silence. She slid one foot, turned her hips, caught his reaching wrist in a hook with the edge of her hand, and let his own momentum right the rest. The pivot was neat, almost polite. His shoulder rolled over the invisible edge of a lever he didn't see, and his weight went down as if the floor had tilted just for him. His breath left his chest in a surprised grunt as his boots scuffed the boards. By the time surprise caught up, she'd stepped through, set her knee along the line of his triceps, and pinned his hand with 2 fingers of pressure between bone and tendon. The hold looked gentle. It wasn't. "Don't touch me again," she said, voice even, a lesson more than a threat. "You won't like what your hand learns." A stool leg squealed. One of Bulldog's men started forward with the reflex of a loyal audience. The bartender's towel froze mid-wipe. At the far side of the room, at a two-top under the mounted longhorns, a man in a checkered shirt and a dusted felt hat pushed his chair back with the quiet scrape of someone who chooses his moments the way carpenters choose where to place a nail. "Easy, fellas," he said, Texas Plains and the vowels, humor folded into the words like a spare knife. He didn't raise his hands or puff his chest. He just stepped into the aisle at an angle that made it impossible to pass him without either looking ridiculous or making a very clear choice. His beard was trimmed, his eyes were bright and rested, and everybody knew his face before their brains offered the name. Chuck Norris looked like a man on his way to somewhere else. He did not look surprised. Bulldog twisted, testing the pressure at his wrist, and found more honesty than he was prepared for. Pain sketched a line across his face. Something ugly flared behind his teeth. "Get off me," he hissed. The woman shifted a fraction, a courtesy adjustment that increased the persuasion without turning it into punishment. "Step back when you stand," she told him. "Both feet, hands to yourself. Do that. We're done." "Hey," one of the vests barked, building the courage out of noise. "You can't—" He didn't finish the sentence. Norris's left hand took his wrist in a clamp that looked like a handshake. Norris's shoulder dipped, and the vest discovered what the balsa rail of the nearest pool table felt like up close. It wasn't a smash. It was neat, like closing a book. The man's breath left him with a surprised, "Huh," and the cue ball rolled 3 inches and kissed a stripe. Another vest lunged from the side. Norris's boot drew a short circle on the floor. His knee framed a clean arc into the man's thigh, and the lunge turned into a stumble that ended with a heavy sit on a bar stool he hadn't planned to occupy. The stool squeaked like a small animal. Norris did nothing showy with his hands. He kept them where everyone could see them, empty, relaxed, plain. No one else moved. Bulldog got his feet under him because the woman allowed it. She slid the pressure off and stepped back a measured pace, giving him the space he claimed to want. He stood, rolled his shoulder, and stared at her with the confused fury of someone who went to push a revolving door and found a wall. "You remember this?" he said, breath hot, finger pointing lower than her face, already back to the script he trusted. "You remember me. You ain't done with me, girl." She didn't back up. She didn't reach for her glass. She didn't give the room any performance. "I can remember a lot of things," she said. "I choose which." He worked his jaw. The tattoo on his shoulder, dark circle, hash of lines, drew the eye like a bullseye. He turned just enough to let his friend see that everything was fine, that the scene still belonged to him. Someone at the end of the bar gave a tight laugh that didn't last. Norris didn't add anything. He didn't look at the bartender, or the door, or the men. He looked at the mirror, at the red blink of the camera above the register, at the small laminates taped near the frame. The closest laminate read in tight block letters, "Surveillance retention, 30 days. The woman saw it too, in the glint of the mirror. She didn't smile. "Problem's over," the bartender said, finally remembering he had a voice. He had the weight of someone who used to be broad and still moved like he could be. He set the towel down and nodded at Bulldog without using his name. "You and your boys want another round. You keep your hands and your comments on your side of the bar." "Comments?" Bulldog repeated, working the word like gristle. His eyes ticked to the camera, to the mirror, to the woman's drink. "A man can't say hello?" "You didn't say hello," the woman answered. "You said what you said. The camera heard it." She tapped the bar with one knuckle just once. "Say it again if you think it sounds better the second time." Silence reasserted itself with a creak from the overhead fan. Someone near the door coughed into a sleeve. The jukebox, forgotten, decided on a new track and thumped into a chorus that sounded too cheerful. Bulldog's eyes narrowed at Norris, at the bartender, at the small crowd of ordinary patrons who were, for once, not pretending to be elsewhere. He wasn't built for rooms that didn't cooperate. His neck flushed. "Let's go," he snapped, garbage sack anger bundled into two words. This place got uppity. He shouldered toward the exit, his men peeling away from the edges of the room in a ragged school of motion. One of them tugged his vest straight and tried for a parting glare that died alone halfway. At the threshold, Bulldog paused. He touched two fingers to his lips as if to set a promise there, and then pointed. Not quite at the woman. Not quite not. "We ain't done," he said. "Count on that." 30 days, the bartender said, not looking up from the bills he'd suddenly become very busy arranging. "That's how long those little red lights remember things. Don't forget your face belongs to today for a month." Bulldog stared a heartbeat longer and then was out into the night. The door took a second to swing closed. When it did, the room exhaled. The woman, Alyssa Morris, as the bartender would later write on a check stub when he put her paid tab in the till, picked up her glass and found the lemon had slid into the drink. She fished it out with a cocktail straw and rested it on the napkin. Her pulse was steady enough to make her mad. It had no right to be steady, and she was glad of it anyway. "You all right, ma'am?" the bartender asked. The formality wasn't fake. It was a shield he tried to lend her like a bouncer's jacket shrugged over bare shoulders in winter. "I am," she said. "Thanks for keeping the room where I could see it. You did the heavy lifting." His eyes flicked to the mirror. "And you kept it on the right side of the law." "That's the only side I'm interested in." She took a slow sip. The ice cracked. Norris slipped the hat off his head and set it on the bar as if it were a delicate machine. "You handled your end clean," he said to Alyssa, conversational, not congratulating. "Nice line on the elbow. Saved your shoulder, his too." "I like joints where they are," she said, meeting his eyes. The corners of hers were soft despite everything. "Thanks for making sure I didn't earn a pile on." "Crowds are like horses," he said. "They go the direction somebody points. Tonight, they needed a fence." He jerked his chin at the camera. "And a witness that don't forget." The bartender poured water into a clean glass and set it beside her drink without asking. He looked at Norris a beat longer than at most men. "Thought you were in town 2 days ago," he said, not quite a question. "I was," Norris said. "Road's good, coffee's better." The bartender snorted and nodded once, a little of the room coming back to him. He busied himself with bottles and checks until his hands looked normal again. Alyssa didn't turn toward the door to see if Bulldog might be lurking in the window. She faced. The mirror, like a pilot using instruments. "He'll be back," she said. It wasn't a worry. It was a weather report. Norris picked up his hat and weighed it in one hand. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe he'll just send rain. Either way, remember this. You don't have to be brave to be smart. Bravery's expensive." "I prefer receipts," she said. He smiled at that, a small thing, private. "If you find you need a second set of eyes or an extra witness, I'm around. Folks know where to find me." He set a square card on the bar and slid it toward her with 2 fingers. A number, no name. He didn't need one. She looked at the card but didn't touch it yet. "I'll handle it," she said, "but I won't say no to a good witness." "Best kind," he said, tipping the hat. He walked back to his table and set the hat on the chair instead of his head, a sign to anyone who knew signs that he wasn't running for the door. He finished what was left of his coffee and considered the room the way farmers consider sky. Alyssa drained her glass and left enough bills under it to cover more than she owed. The bartender tried to push one back with a flat palm. She shook her head and nudged it toward him again. "For the sign," she said, meaning the laminated print by the mirror. "If it fades, print another." Outside, tires hissed on the highway. The nights at the old crossing folded into each other like pages. One more, one less. The neon buzzed. Somebody finally remembered the jukebox and picked a song that didn't sound like a dare. Alyssa stepped to the door and paused. She looked through the glass first, not at the parking lot, but at the reflection of the room behind her, at the camera, blinking its patient red, at the bartender arranging napkins into tidy square stacks, at the man in the checkered shirt testing the weight of his hat, as if hats could tell the future. Then she pushed into the night. On the inside of the door, at eye level, if you were leaving, another piece of paper was taped. White, no flourish, only print, private property, audio, video, recorded on premises, retained for 30 days. Bulldog hadn't read it on his way out. He'd never been the reading type. The parking lot held its ordinary shadows. A truck ticked as it cooled. A moth beat itself senseless against the lamp above the ice machine. Alyssa's car sat where she'd left it. 4 good tires, 2 good headlights, and a windshield that had seen worse winters. She unlocked it, slid in, and shut the door with the soft clunk of a thing that fit. She rested her head back for a breath and watched the bar through the rearview mirror. A couple stepped out, crossed to a pickup, and left. Nothing else moved. She started the engine and let the hum settle nerves she wasn't admitting to. When she shifted into reverse, her phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. She let it go to voicemail and pulled out. Back inside, Norris stood, set a bill that would cover half the room under his cup, and gave the bartender a look that meant more than thanks. Then he stepped into the same night and the same ordinary parking lot and the same slow air. He didn't look around for trouble. He looked like a man who knew the difference between trouble and a schedule. In the mirror above the bar, the little red light blinked on and off, counting to 30 days in its own language. Underneath it, the bartender peeled old tape from the surveillance retention sign and pressed fresh tape down at the corners. People notice signs when trouble teaches them, too. The door swung in twice more before close. A guy in a work shirt who wanted a six-pack to go, a woman who wanted the jukebox to stop fighting the air conditioner. Then the night grew still in the way small towns do, and the old crossing folded itself closed. No one told the floor to remember where a man had hit it and who had put him there. But floors do remember. So do cameras. So do people who decide on a Tuesday that a line exists and it's not moving for anyone's bad idea. Outside the parking lot, the highway ran on. Beyond the highway, the town was what it had been that morning. Brick, plywood, yellow porch light. A dog that barked at nothing because nothing sometimes needs to be told. The weather would hold through the night. Morning would come. And somewhere along that road, Anger in a leather vest would pace a room and practice lines for the next scene. The old crossing would be ready. So would the woman in the white tank and the light denim who had asked once and then made the point when she wasn't given a choice. And the man in the checkered shirt and hat. He would be where witnesses tend to be when people insist on crossing lines. They're standing where the light is good. Morning made the bar feel like a story someone told. Alyssa woke to the story's sequel on her driveway. Both rear tires were low enough to look embarrassed. The car sat cocked, soft on the rims, on. The garage door red paint bled down in crude letters that tried to shout and mostly just ran, "Go home." She stood in the quiet and let the cheap sweetness of hardware store spray paint mix with dew and cut grass. Then she took out her phone and did the obvious things. Wide shot of the door, close on the drips, tread-level photos of the punctures, the path of footprints that didn't quite hide themselves in the dust at the edge of the slab. She narrated the date and time in a flat voice so future her wouldn't have to remember exactly how early it had been. Neighbors' blinds blinked. No one opened a door. She hosed the letters until the paint went from threat to pink foam, and from foam to stains that would need a solvent she didn't own. Then she slid the jack under the rear quarter and got both wheels off like the shop teacher she'd been for exactly one semester before the budget cut axed her position. She patched the punctures on sawhorses, because most problems you can't fix in one sitting look smaller if you put them at a comfortable height. By 9, her hands were clean, tires held air, and a receipt email from an online electronics store sat in her inbox. One weather-capable dome camera with a clear bubble and aggressive LED, one memory card, one roll of adhesive cable clips. She added 2 laminated signs to the cart and a cheap battery-backed siren she might never wire in. The credit card company pinged back a fraud check. She tapped, "Yes, it's me," sent the order to pickup, and drove to the big box store with 2 coffees and a list. The clerk asked if she needed installation service. Alyssa said no and meant it. Back home, she ran the cable along the fascia, 3 clips per span, tension clean, no loop slack to tempt a bird. She mounted the dome where the soffit met the brick, angled to see the length of the driveway, the step, the mailbox, the street where a bike could idle out of plate range. Inside, she placed the small recorder in the vented shoebox on a closet shelf and set the schedule to continuous with event marks on motion. Date time overlay burned onto the frame, audio on, storage clock to roll for 30 days. She printed a phrase on a strip of tape and stuck it to the recorder. Don't touch, let it work. At lunch, she drove to the old crossing with a rag in her back pocket and calm in her face. The bartender looked at the door before he looked at her, as if reading weather in reverse. "You want a seltzer?" he asked. "I want a copy," she said, nodding at the camera. "Last night, 10 to closing. I'll pay for the drive." "You don't have to." He reached under the bar for a laminated card with a QR code labeled Request Footage. Owner put a system on his system after a fight last winter, forms and signatures. He gets twitchy about chain of custody. You file it. He clicks OK. I hand you a stick. "Fair," she said, scanning the code. The form asked for time, angle, purpose, contact info, whether she wanted police notified an hour later. She checked later, added a note, potential harassment, keep until requested, and hit submit. Her phone buzzed an approval ding before she tucked it away. The bell over the door chimed. The man in the checkered shirt and hat walked in with 2 to-go cups and a folded paper bag. He set 1 cup on the bar in front of her like he'd been sent for that errand all his life. "Sugar's on the side," he said, tapping the bag, "and this is for when hardware store paint fights back." He nudged the second item toward her. It was a small bottle of graffiti remover with a sarcastic name and a skull and crossbones worth respecting. "Wear gloves." She turned the bottle, reading the warnings. "You carry this as a hobby?" "I carry it because people like to write checks with cans they can't cash in court." He slid a business card next to the cup. No logo, just a name and a number that started with the area code of a city that scared people who thought they were immune to being scared. He's a lawyer who hates small-town extortion. He'll tell you when to talk and when to keep your powder dry. "I don't plan to ride this to a courtroom," she said. "That's all right," he said. "Courtrooms sometimes ride to you." She put the bottle in her bag and the card in her wallet, not as a promise, but as a tool. "Thanks for yesterday." "You did the hard part," he said. "You did it where a lens could testify. Bulldog didn't like that. No one who talks like that does." He tipped his head at the new purchase in her bag, the corner of the dome camera box peeking. "You putting eyes on your place? And on the line." She pulled a roll of bright orange tape from the bag he hadn't seen her put there. "I'm marking property. If they want to play games, they're going to have to play on my side of the rules." She hesitated. "You know people at City Hall?" "I know a man who unlocks the park bathrooms on Saturdays and knows every code violation on Maine by smell. Tell him I'll be filing for a permit to run a free clinic in the rec room, Basics, de-escalation, leave first skills. She saw the way he nodded like a slow drumbeat. Not a class about fighting, a class about not needing to. He didn't smile exactly. I'll tell him to approve the room. In the afternoon, Alyssa stood under her shop's tin awning and watched the street heat up. She worked 2 days a week at Harlan's Auto. Front desk, estimates, triage for panicked noises, and Harlan let her trade hours for baytime when she wanted a lift. The building was a long rectangle painted the gray of primer, with a glass office, a row of roll-up doors, and a fading sign that claimed brakes, oil, tires. She tape measured from the door jamb to the slump in the curb where the property line bent, then rolled a coat of orange marking paint across the concrete from post to parking stop. The stripe wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. It needed to be unambiguous on camera. She printed 2 more signs and taped them to the glass. Private property begins at orange line and audio, video, recording in use. She checked the angle of the new dome camera under the awning twice. One view down the line, one across the customer area, license plates framed without trying. At 3:30, the summer sky boiled into distant thunder that never arrived. At 4:15, the shop quieted, that late afternoon breath before commuters rolled in with noises they'd been ignoring for miles. At 4:22, 3 motorcycles arrived together because intimidation is a choreography. They idled half a second in the street, then pulled up just shy of the orange paint and killed their engines in a way that was meant to sound like a verdict. The men who swung a leg off wore the same cut as the night before, but different faces. Younger, hungrier, eyes always asking the person next to them what emotion to feel. One had a phone out and recording before his boots hit the ground. Another, squared, had a smile he'd seen on someone else. "Afternoon," Alyssa said through the open office door, voice flat enough to stack things on. "State your business." "Just checking on you, sweetheart," the squared one said, planting feet at the line like it was a finish he'd won. "See if you got your smile back." She pointed with 2 fingers, first to the camera, then to the sign. Then she spoke in the tone of someone reading into a microphone. "For the recording, you are on private property at the orange line. You have just said, quote, 'We're just checking on you, sweetheart. See if you got your smile back.' You're being recorded on audio and video. If you cross the line or repeat last night's behavior, I will call 911. The phone holder smirked and did a little sweep like a low-budget videographer. "Ain't no cops going to crawl out here in time," he said. "Response times are faster when you narrate clearly," she said, not looking at him. "Do not cross the line." "Come here, sexy girl," the squared one said, as if he'd been handed a cue card. "Don't be shy." "For the recording," she said, "you repeated an earlier phrase. You have been warned." He leaned towards the stripe as if it might flinch. He did not step over. A pickup door clicked behind them. "Wouldn't," a calm voice said. The man in the hat stepped around the trucks as if he'd been cutting through alleys like this since alleys were invented. He carried a paper tray with 2 coffees and the posture of a man who can put his hands in his pockets and still move fast. "You've already donated your best lines to 2 cameras. Crossing that paint donates your boots." "Who the hell are you?" the phone holder asked, angling to get Norris and Alyssa in the same shot. "Witness," he said, polite as a weather report. He looked past them at the mechanic bay, where Harlan and 2 guys in uniforms stood in the dim, curious in the way people are before they know they've become witnesses too. Norris raised his chin at them. "Phone numbers, fellas. Names spelled right. You'll want to be in the book when this goes to paper." Harlan wiped his hands on a rag and moved to the office window where the bell could hear him. "It's my property," he called. "Line's mine. You cross it, you're trespassing. Camera sees it. Judge sees it." The squared one's smirk flickered. Bullies prefer settings where other people's words don't carry. He turned his attention back to Alyssa, as if dragging the scene back to its original set would force it to behave. "We were nice last night," he said. "Our boss is a good man. He don't like disrespect." "Tell your boss to call a therapist," Alyssa said, "or a mirror." The phone holder laughed because laughter is easier to fake than confidence. He tilted the lens toward Norris. "Say your name for the camera, cowboy." "Ask politely," Norris said. "And after you ask politely, ask yourself if you want this line drawn on top of every other poor choice you filmed this month." "Man, just say your name," the third one muttered, nerves beginning to show. "We ain't here for you." "That's right," Norris said. "You're here to not cross that orange line." He lifted the coffee tray. "And I'm here to deliver a latte and a list." He set one cup on the office counter by Alyssa's elbow and a sheet of paper beside it. The paper already had columns: name, phone, what you saw, heard. He scrawled his own name and number in block letters so clear a tired clerk couldn't misread them. He handed the pen through the window to Harlan. "Pass this down the line." Harlan took the pen like he'd been waiting for a tool that simple. "Boys," he said to his crew without looking away from the bikers, "write it and date it." The squared one shifted his weight, then immediately unshifted it the moment a boot edged within an inch of orange. The camera's red LED gave its indifferent blink. His eyes cut to it and back. "You keep talking like a cop," he told Alyssa. "Ain't a good look on you." "I like how cops sound on paper," she said. "It's clean. For the record, gets attention." He leaned back, a motion meant to look casual, and landed somewhere near checked. "You think cameras save you?" "Cameras catch angles, that's all." "That's all I need," she said. "Angles and timestamps." Norris's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then up. "Owner of the old crossing says your footage request is approved," he told Alyssa, not bothering to keep his voice private. "He's pulling last night from 10 to close. He'll hold the file and a backup." "You talked to him that fast?" Harlan asked, half a laugh under his breath. "People answer their phones when you practice," Norris said. A car pulled into the other bay, driver's window down, radio low. A woman in scrubs peered over the dashboard, took in the tableau, men in leather on one side of a paint stripe, a woman at a counter with a clipboard, a man in a hat who somehow made everything calmer by naming it, and decided to stay in her seat and text rather than add her voice to the air. That choice, too, would end up in someone's account. I saw them just standing there at a line. She kept saying, for the record. "You think this is over because you drew a line?" the squared one asked Norris, as if the man in the hat had needed proof he'd learned the wrong lesson. "I think you'll cross that line when no one's looking," Norris said, "and I think you'll be wrong about no one." He nodded at the dome under the awning. "That one hears better than you do." The phone holder zoomed in uselessly, got a blown-out image of the bubble instead of what it saw. "You think you're funny," he said. "No," Norris said. "I think I'm patient." He looked at his watch, which had a face big enough for men who don't like reading glasses. "You boys done not crossing a line for the day?" The squared one gave up the pose with visible relief and took a half step back from the paint as if distance could rewrite tape. "Tell your boyfriend to stop buying you toys," he told Alyssa. "He's a witness," she said, "and you're on audio." "Yeah?" He swung a leg over the saddle. "Then record this. Bulldog, don't forget." 30 days, Alyssa said. "That's how long he gets to hear himself say that." Engines barked to life like bad dogs. The three bikes angled out into traffic, impatient in the way machines get when men ask them to say something for them. They were gone by the time Harlan finished his line on the sheet and passed the pen to the next man. "Coffee's hot," Norris said, like the scene needed an ordinary sentence to re-enter the day. "Drink it before you forget it's there." Alyssa sipped. Sugar wasn't on the side. He'd already guessed how she took it. She didn't give him the smile the bikers had asked for. She gave him a nod that was better. "Thanks for the list," she said, tapping the witness sheet. "Lists win," he said. "Eventually. Eventually is too slow. Eventually is faster than nothing." She let that stand. "You ever teach people to do what you just did?" she asked. "The part where the room stops following the worst idea in it?" "Every day for 40 years, he said. "Sometimes my name's on the flyer, sometimes it isn't." "Saturday," she said. "Rec room. If the city says yes, they'll say yes." They did. The approval email came while she was closing the drawer on the cash box at 6. Subject line, "Community room use, approved." Beneath the stamped permit, a short message from a community officer waited, written in the careful language of someone who knows words can become exhibits. "Miss Morris, we understand you may wish to make a report regarding incidents occurring at the old crossing. Date, time, approx. 2145, 2300. 2, at your residence, vandalism, and 3, at your workplace, Verbal harassment. You're welcome to come by the station to file a formal statement. If you experience repeated contact, please dial non-emergency or 911 as appropriate. Respectfully, Officer J. Ortega. It wasn't a promise. Promises in towns like this were currency you couldn't spend. But it was a line in a log with a name on it. That counted. She forwarded the email to herself so it would be easy to find on a bad day, and to Harlan so he would know there was paper on the way. Then she shut off the office lights, checked the dome's red LED, and locked the door with the kind of double check you do after something has leaned on you. On the sidewalk, dusk did the thing it does, where edges go soft and signs glow brighter than they deserve. Across the street, a woman folded an A-frame chalkboard that used to say fresh pies and now said closed. Alyssa stood at the orange line and looked at it like looking were a kind of work. She didn't feel safe. She felt like she had given the future jobs that could be measured. She took a photo of the line from the camera's point of view, standing where the lens looked, and sent it to herself with a subject line that would be easy to search. Orange line, day 1. Then she walked the length of the storefront, checking for shadows that made convenient mistakes. When she finished, Norris was still there, hat tilted, hands in pockets like a man who had nowhere better to be even if that wasn't true. "You did good," he said. "You made them spend energy not crossing paint." "I made me spend energy watching paint dry," she said. "That too." He tipped his chin towards the new sign on the glass. "That phrase you put up, boundaries, witnesses, recording." He let the words sit in his mouth. "People remember 3. "It's for me," she said. "I'll forget if I get tired." "Everyone forgets when they're tired," he said. "Write it where you can see it." She locked her car and slung her bag across her shoulder. "You think they come back tonight?" she asked. "I think they don't like not being the last voice," he said. "Men like that always come looking for a place where their noise still sounds large." "Then they'll go where crowds don't know any better," she said, "where someone holds a phone and calls it power." He nodded, not agreeing, not disagreeing, just marking that the thought was on the table. "If you want a copy of that bar footage before the owner's back in, I can collect it in the morning. He trusts me not to drop things." "Do it," she said. "Chain of custody." "Chain of custody," he echoed, like a prayer for bureaucrats. By the time she pulled into her driveway, the garage door stains were lighter, but not gone. She set the remover on the shelf, put on gloves, and worked the red down to ghosts. When she finished, she took another photo, logged the time, and sent both to a folder marked Incidents. Then she microwaved soup, ate half of it standing, and almost betrayed her own rule by scrolling Bulldog's social media for anything that felt like a clue. She stopped, locked her phone, and put it in a different room. Her dome camera hummed to itself like a patient bee. As she brushed her teeth, her phone buzzed where she couldn't reach it and then buzzed again. When she finally checked it in the kitchen, the screen showed a voicemail transcription from an unknown number that the carrier thought might belong to a throwaway app. "Where are you at tonight? Don't hide. We just talk." She didn't save it. She screenshotted it, emailed it to the incidents folder, and deleted the message. Then she wrote on a sticky note and stuck it to her front door at eye level where she would see it every time she reached for the knob: boundaries, witnesses, recording. Sleep came in sections. In one, she was in the bar again, but this time the mirror showed only the red blink and nothing beneath it. No people, no words, just the light counting the number she couldn't see. In another, a paint line ran through the middle of her living room, and she kept explaining it to no one. She woke at 3 and padded to the window. The driveway looked like every driveway does at 3 in the morning, dumb and honest. The dome's LED glowed. A moth threw itself against the porch light and lost. She breathed and let it be. The town breathed with her. It wasn't safer than it had been. It wasn't worse. It was a place where a line had been drawn and a camera had been hung and a witness had written his name in block letters you could read even when you were tired. Eventually, beats nothing, she thought. Then she closed the blinds and put her forehead to the cool of the door for 1 second and went back to bed. Saturday was 2 days away. There would be crowds. Crowds were where bad scripts went to look for a stage. She didn't plan to give them one. Saturday came with folding tables and steam from coffee urns. By 9, the town square had turned itself into a fair. Bunting on light poles, chalk arrows on concrete, a stage assembled from rented risers, vendors sliding cash boxes beneath tablecloths. Kids hunted for the face paint booth. Dogs tried to be good. Someone tuned a guitar too long. A municipal sign on a sawhorse. Read event rules in polite fonts. No weapons. Keep aisles clear. Follow staff instructions. Area under video surveillance. Alyssa parked 2 blocks out, where shade would still exist at noon, and walked in with a plastic bin of woven bracelets and a card reader. She sat up beside her friend Mara. Candles, clean labels, ruthless pricing, then took a slow lap of the perimeter the way you do when you've promised yourself you'll see the room before the room sees you. Cameras rode the light poles in little black domes. A city staffer in a safety vest pointed vendors to fire lanes and zip-tied banners at shoulder height instead of head. Security badges weren't cops. They were city employees who knew which outlet tripped which breaker. Boundaries, witnesses, recording. Alyssa murmured to herself, testing the words where no one could hear. The mantra sat right behind her tongue like a retainer. By 11, the square had that specific heat of bodies and grills. A bluegrass trio found a groove, and the crowd found space to sway without calling it dancing. Mara handled a line of customers. Alyssa tied a bracelet on a little girl's wrist and used the moment to clock a new camera angle. Across from the stage, you could see their row end to end. At 11:48, engines sounded wrong for a fare. 6 cruisers, chrome loud, black leather louder, slid off Main and crawled down the blocked street until they struck the seam where crowds thin of their own accord. They parked in a chevron instead of stalls, precision masquerading as carelessness. Helmets came off. Vests flashed. The square took a breath and pretended it hadn't. Bulldog led, tattoo catching son, jaw already set at the angle of grievance. He didn't look right or left. He walked the middle and let people move around him because that's what people do until someone tells them they don't have to. Mara's hand closed around the edge of the table, hard enough to wrinkle cloth. "Want me to call?" "Not yet," Alyssa said. She lifted her phone not to dial but to confirm the little red dot in the corner. The square's public Wi-Fi had a login page with a banner, "Cameras are active." She hit record anyway for redundancy. "We're in the light. Stay in the light." Bulldog stopped 3 feet from her end cap, boots on duct-taped X's meant for a later raffle. His mouth wanted a smirk, but the last 48 hours hadn't given it much to work with. "I said we weren't done," he told the air, then to her, "Come here, sexy girl. Don't be shy. Don't kill the vibe." Alyssa didn't step back or forward. She did the third thing, squared her feet so the stage camera would see her and the park camera would catch his profile. "For the record," she said in a voice you'd use to spell a name at a prescription counter, "this is a public event under city permits with posted surveillance. You said, quote, 'Come here, sexy girl. Don't be shy. Don't kill the vibe. Consider this a warning to leave me alone.'" Someone 2 tables down muttered, "Good for her," in the small tone people use when they're trying to be brave without being noticed. Security in a yellow vest touched his radio. The staffer at the power distro stepped closer to the nearest dome and said, "Camera 3, confirm," to no one Alyssa could see. A man from Bulldog's left, bare arms, cheap grin, opened a butterfly knife because he thought a click would write fear into the air. The blade flashed more toy than tool. "Knife," Alyssa said, not for him but for microphones. Visible knife at a permitted event. The man stepped quick because he had to match the click with motion or look like a clown. Alyssa's hands were already where they needed to be, one forearm guarding, the other reaching for his wrist the way you'd catch a fallen handle. She met his forearm, slid to his wrist with a hook of her thumb, turned his palm like she was opening a door, and took his balance with a small step he didn't notice until the ground moved. The knife slid into the space between them as if it had decided on its own to be somewhere safer. It hit the concrete with the click he'd wanted from the air. He went to a knee because gravity doesn't argue, then 2 because pain convinced him to. Alyssa didn't wrench or twist to punish. She settled her weight on the back of his hand just enough to make the point that it was her hand now. "Stay down," she said. "Don't reach." Another vest came from behind, that classic bad angle that relies on the target being busy. Alyssa heard the small shift of shoes on grit and did the old, boring thing that works. Step back into him, sink into her hips, pin his shin with her heel, and peel his hand off her shoulder before it found purchase. He flopped forward into his friend's radius and decided momentum wasn't his friend after all. On Alyssa's right, a bar stool didn't exist, but a folding chair did. Norris materialized exactly the way a man who doesn't want to be called dramatic materializes. From the edge, through the gap, at the right height. He grabbed the chair by the top slat and swung it up, not to strike, but to occupy space between a third vest and Alyssa. The chair pressed the man's chest to the temporary lattice fence around a flower bed with a firmness that suggested the chair had always been meant for this. The man tried to shove back and found the chair was an argument he could not win, without looking ridiculous in 40 angles of video. "Stay put," Norris told him, tone conversational. "We'll get you untangled when you behave." The municipal security guard's voice came over a portable PA like a lifeguard's whistle. "Everyone hold where you are. This area is under video surveillance. Police are en route. Do not interfere. Vendors, stay with your tables." Bulldog, who had not moved farther than his words, took a sudden step to his right like a man moving off a mark, as if changing position would change the tape that already existed. He looked at the nearest dome and then at the cell phones, suddenly pointed at him by people who hadn't planned to be brave and were being it anyway. His eyes found Alyssa's. "You think cameras save you?" he said again, as if sooner or later the sentence would sound persuasive. "They save the next person," she said, "for the record." He snarled at that, an actual sound, not a word, and lunged the half step he had left himself. He reached not for her throat, not after the lesson at the bar. He went low for her waist where he thought speed would outpace sense. She did what she'd done before because it still worked. She took his hand the way you take a tool you've used 1,000 times, rolled his wrist over her center, cut his feet with the smallest possible sweep, and let the ground collect him. The crowd made that oof noise crowds make when they see physics rehearse humility. Alyssa put her knee on his triceps and her palm over the back of his hand and spoke to him without heat. "Don't move." He moved. She reminded him with 2 ounces more pressure that some choices are over even when you don't want them to be. Sirens arrived not like cavalry, but like policy. 2 cruisers nose in at the barricade, one angle to block, the other to keep a lane for ambulance if needed. The first officer out didn't draw, didn't shout anything that would add static. He walked the pace of a man who knows his cameras are already rolling and that the only thing worse than a mess is a messy record of a mess. The sergeant was the kind of mid-40s fit you get when paperwork steals your evenings but you still run on Saturdays. "Ortega," the badge said. He took 3 scans of the scene. Knife on concrete, man on knees, another pinned to lattice by a chair, Bulldog under a woman who wasn't sweating, and picked the only sentence that made sense. "Everyone freeze and keep your hands visible," he said. Then to Alyssa, "Ma'am, do you need to adjust your position for safety?" "I'm good," she said. "He's contained." "Copy." To Bulldog, "Sir, do not test her or me." To his partner, "Secure the knife." Phones stayed up. Ortega didn't scold them. He lifted his own body camera with 2 fingers so they'd see it was there and live. "Who's calling the play?" he asked without drama. "Boundaries, witnesses, recording," Norris said from the right, still holding the chair as if it were a gentle dog. She warned. He lunged. "We have at least 3 city cameras and 20 citizen phones. I have last night's bar footage on a drive for you, too." "Chain of custody?" Ortega asked. "In a labeled envelope," Norris said. "Owner released a copy this morning. Original retained. I'll hand it to you when your hands are free." Alyssa spoke without looking away from Bulldog. "For the record, visible knife at a city event. Verbal harassment repeated. Unwanted contact attempt. I gave warnings." Ortega nodded once, the way you nod to a student who has remembered something important in the correct order. He raised his voice just enough for the PA to hear him. "Attention. This is a police action. Stay back. Keep recording if you are recording. Do not crowd the officers. City cams are capturing as well." He made the choices in the sensible order. Zip ties to the man with the knife first because blades change conversations. Then relieve Norris of his chair and rotate the pinned man onto his belly for cuffs. Then trade places with Alyssa at Bulldog's arm. When Ortega took the control on Bulldog's wrist and felt the neatness of the joint, he gave Alyssa a professional glance of respect he didn't waste words on. She stepped back 2 paces with her palms open and visible. Mara slid a bottle of water into her hand like a magician palming a coin. "Don't drink too much yet," she whispered. "They'll want your voice steady." Bulldog found his mouth again while his wrists found nylon. "This is a setup," he spat. "She wanted attention." Ortega didn't bother looking at him. "Setups happen where cameras aren't," he said. "Today is not that day." He helped Bulldog to his feet without ceremony and parked him on a curb with the others. "Weapons on anyone else?" "Nothing." The crowd, gaining confidence in the presence of competence, muttered things it would later repeat to spouses. He just went for her. She warned him. It happened right here. The guy with the chair. Yeah, that guy. You know who that is? Ortega moved through the beats that make future paperwork bearable. Names, dates of birth, quick check for warrants. He murmured to his partner, who murmured back, and the speed changed not because they had made up their minds, but because the computer had. 2 on probation, Ortega said quietly. "Judge is going to love the video." He stepped to Alyssa with his notebook open. "Miss Morris," she said. "Alyssa, 2 S's. He wrote it in block letters. "You want to make a formal report now or at the station?" "Now," she said. She pointed. Not at people, but at structure. City camera there, there, and there. Vendor phones here, and at the kettle corn stand. My phone, too. She handed it over unlocked with the recording still running. "I'll airdrop or email as you like. Bar footage from Thursday is with him." She indicated Norris without using his name like a talisman. Norris set a small tan envelope on the table. Timestamps, camera angle, his own initials across the flap. "Owner asked for a receipt," he told Ortega. "I told him you'd sign." "I will," Ortega said, "and I'll call him to confirm we pulled it. Thank you." He took slow statements that sounded like this. "Tell me what you saw starting with what you heard, and, if you can, repeat the phrases you remember exactly." He didn't push if people said, he said something like, he asked, "Do you want me to mark that as a paraphrase?" He spoke to the municipal staffer operating the PA and to the guy at the power distro who had watched the dome camera feeds on a tablet. He got names, spelled them, checked pronunciations, and didn't correct the woman from the candle booth when she said butterfly wrong, just wrote it the right way. Mara gave her statement and clipped sentences with her chin up. He said the words she repeated. He said them once at the bar. "I was there too Thursday, and once here. There was a knife." She warned. He moved. She put him down clean. "What do you mean by clean?" Ortega asked. "No wasted motion," Mara said. "No extra." Ortega gave her the same small nod he'd given Alyssa. Words like that travel well to judges. One of the vests rolled his shoulders against the cuffs. "We didn't touch nobody," he threw into the air, trying to audition a defense. "You brought a knife to a place with cotton candy," Ortega said without looking. "You touched all kinds of things. Ambulance siren? No. No blood. Paramedics lean in without lights when they know their day will be better if they have fewer billable incidents. None leaned in. Ortega kept the noise level down by not adding his own. He separated Alyssa and Norris for statements because good reports don't read like rehearsals. He didn't ask Norris to say his name on camera. He had it from the envelope. And, more important, he had Norris's function. Witness who collected witness names and evidence without escalating. That part can be the difference between a case that survives and one that dissolves in he said, she said. "Charges?" someone in a visor asked from just outside Alyssa's personal space, because people always want charges in the moment like they want diagnosis from a waiting room chair. "We start with what we can see and what we can prove," Ortega said, keeping his eyes on his notes. "Disorderly conduct, menacing, unlawful possession of a blade at a permitted event, harassment. If prior incidents connect, vandalism, stalking will attach. But we don't get clever on day one, we get accurate." Alyssa appreciated that more than she expected to. Accuracy beats cleverness is how you stay out of the ditch. They loaded Bulldog and 2 of his men into the back of one cruiser and the other 3 into the second. Doors thunked. Phones recorded the taillights. Ortega didn't turn to the crowd and promise anything. He turned to the municipal staffer and said, "Resume in 10. Make an announcement about reporting. Give them the non-emergency number and the link for footage upload." The staffer took the mic and did exactly that, shaky at first, steadier by the end. "If you recorded any part of the incident, please email your video to the address on our website under Public Safety. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's okay." If you want to call back, include your number. Do not post faces of minors. Thank you for staying calm." Alyssa finally drank the water. Her hands shook a little because hands have their own timelines. Mara leaned a hip against her table and said nothing until saying something would help. "You're okay," Mara said eventually. "I'm within parameters," Alyssa said. "Okay is a feeling. This is a checklist." Norris set the folding chair back where it had come from and pressed the legs until the wobble found level. He checked on the flower bed out of habit. No crushed stems, just a lattice with a scuff that would make someone frown tomorrow. He came back with 2 paper napkins because dignity prefers small practicalities to speeches. "Police will want you downtown later," he said. "Ortega prefers clean timelines. He'll give you the form that lets you attach video without losing the original." "You know him?" Mara asked, suspicion reflexive and not unfriendly. "I know his type," Norris said. "He writes like a man who's been yelled at by a judge and decided to never give her the chance to yell about the same thing twice." Alyssa checked her phone. Battery 58, storage enough. She sent her video to the city address and to her incidents folder with subject fair. Primary cam angle, knife. She added a line in the body for later Alyssa. "Remember, keep narration neutral. Don't argue with the camera." The band had stopped when the sirens came. Now they looked at each other the way musicians do when they're deciding whether music is still welcome. The guitarist said something. The mandolin player smiled too big, and they chose a tune that sounded like making the best of it. Kids drifted back to the face paint tent like fish returning to a reef after a shark moves on. Adults pretended to be normal and mostly fooled themselves. Ortega returned to the table with a clipboard and a tired kindness. "Miss Morris, thank you. We'll be in touch. If you get texts, calls, messages on social media from any of them, save screenshots and don't reply. If they approach you again, call 911. If they hang out near your home or work without approaching, call non-emergency and say the words talking." It wrote differently. "Copy," Alyssa said. She heard her own voice and heard how the old training lived there, even if the training had been for something else, somewhere else. "Do you need me to come in now?" "Later today would help," Ortega said. "Get food in you first. Bring your charger. It's always longer than we say." He left them with a paper that had all the boring boxes and a footer that mattered. Case number and officer of record, Sergeant J. Ortega. Cases get lost when they have no number and belong to no one. Mara blew out a breath that had lasted an hour. "I hate men like that," she said, small like a confession, not a thesis. "I hate that they think this square's theirs," Alyssa said. "It's not. It belongs to cameras and schedules and kids with tiger faces." "You said, for the record, a lot," Mara said. "It keeps me honest," Alyssa said, "and it reminds everyone else that honesty is being measured." Norris had drifted a step away, not hovering, just available. "You did what you said you would," he told Alyssa. "You didn't give them the stage." "They brought their own," she said, jerking her chin at the phone still up, still filming something else now. Dogs, a kid's balloon trapped on a branch, recovery pretending to be normal. But the Latin wasn't kind to them this time. He half smiled. Light has favorites. She looked past him at the camera dome on the pole. The little diode winked again, indifferent, tireless. 30 days, she said. Plenty of time for someone to remember they saw something. Plenty of time for someone to try to erase something too, Norris said. But that's your advantage. There are too many somethings now. Alyssa nodded. I'll go to the station after we pack. You should eat first, he said. We'll eat at the station, Mara said firmly. I'm buying vending machine dinners for Justice. Justice hates those sandwiches, Norris said. Justice can cope, Mara said. It's got strong teeth. People came back. Not everyone, but enough to make the fair look like itself again. A woman with a stroller walked up to Alyssa's table and said, I saw what you did. Thank you. She didn't linger for a story. She bought 2 bracelets like she'd been planning to all morning and had simply been detained. A teenager with a baseball cap backward asked in the world's worst whisper, Was that really like the... and then blushed when Norris winked and said, Just a man who likes chairs. At 2, the sun pressed the square flat. At 3, clouds flattered everyone and the band found a final chorus. Alyssa packed the bin, counted the square's small wins into her cash box, and let Mara talk her into stopping by the station before home. In the cool fluorescent of the report room, Ortega had already printed the incident number on 4 forms and labeled a manila folder, Morris A. He took their statements again, this time slower, this time with the sound off in the world outside. He logged the flash drive from the bar by serial number, sealed it in an evidence bag, and made Norris initial the seal. He called Municipal IT and asked them to retain cameras 3, 6, and 9 from 1100 to 1300 and got a confirmation code. He pulled mugshots that looked like they'd been taken on better days and wrote probation hold in the margin for 2. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. Court dates will come, he said instead. You'll get a subpoena if we need you. If anyone approaches you about a dropping it, call me. If anyone in a badge treats you like you're the problem, call me and then call internal. That's not me waving a flag. That's me telling you the path. Understood, Alyssa said. Her handwriting on the bottom of the form was small and exact. Do you want an escort to your car tonight? He asked. We could spare a unit for a loop. I'll be fine, she said. I've got lights and neighbors, and a dome with a long memory. Good, Ortega said. Cameras aren't everything, but they argue well for you. When they walked back out into the evening, the town felt like it had shifted half an inch on its foundation. It wasn't a miracle, just the recalibration that happens when a script breaks in front of an audience and the audience doesn't boo the rewrite. Mara elbowed Alyssa lightly. You know, the class at the rec room's going to be full after today, right? It was going to be full before, Alyssa said. Now, maybe people will show up on time. Norris fell in on her other side like a bookend. You still on for Saturday? He asked. I am, Alyssa said. No fighting, no heroics, just distance, voice, exits, and what to say so a camera understands you. Say it again, he said. Boundaries, witnesses, recording. Good, he said. Keep it simple. Simple survives contact. They reached the corner where their cars parted ways. Norris tipped his hat in a small private salute and didn't offer rides or warnings he'd already given. Mara yawned like a person who had earned it. Alyssa looked at the square one last time, at the dome cameras, at the chalk arrows half tracked away by feet, at the flower bed with the scuffed lattice and uncrushed stems. Point of no return, she thought, and let the phrase be factual instead of dramatic. He had forced the scene into the light. The light had kept its end of the deal. Her phone buzzed. Ortega, FYI, 2 held on probation violations. Others cited released pending, DA. Will coordinate with you, Ari. Protective order Monday. She texted back received, then she put the phone away before it could give her anything else to feel. Home would be nothing special. Leftovers, a quiet check of the dome's files, a sticky note to pack a charger and granola bars for court someday. The night would be ordinary unless someone tried to make it otherwise. If they did, the orange line was still orange, the lens still blinked, and the script was not theirs anymore. By late afternoon, the fair had been folded back into sidewalks and the town returned to its usual noises. The police station did not. Its lights never matched the sun. Inside, Sergeant Ortega had a plastic tub of flash drives labeled with blue tape and a felt tip marker that had seen enough chain of custody forms to lose its cap. He slid Norris's tan envelope into an evidence bag, read the serial number off the drive, wrote it twice, once on the bag, once on the log, and had Norris initial the seal. Owner retains the original, Norris said, palms visible, nothing extra. I told him you'd call to confirm. I will, Ortega said. He flipped a form to Alyssa. This is the retention request for the city cameras. I've already queued the holds, but I want your signature on the packet. 3, 6, and 9 from 11 to 1. We'll also pull exterior cams at the corners in case anyone circled the block to feel brave. Alyssa signed in small square letters, the way you sign when you intend to recognize your handwriting in 6 months. The box beneath asked, do you request notification if footage is released to defense? She checked yes. Transparency is only useful if it keeps you in the loop. Ortega took her statement again, this time in the cadence of a transcript because it would be. Use your own words. Don't fix grammar. Just tell it straight. I'll mark paraphrases when you're not sure. She told it in the order it had happened and the order it would be read. Bar, driveway paint, orange line, fair, knife, warnings. She didn't sell anything to the page. When she reached the part with the phrase, she said it as flatly as she'd said it at the table. He said, "Come here, sexy girl. Don't be shy. Don't kill the vibe." I warned him twice that we were recorded. He advanced. I used minimal force to stop contact. No strikes. Minimal force, Ortega repeated as he typed. Good phrase. Judges read it the way you mean it. Mara's statement came after, clipped and neat. Harlan's added the orange line and the shop scene to the timeline. The park staffer provided timestamps from the event control tablet, each camera window with a digital clock at bottom right. 2 vendors emailed shaky vertical videos that were nonetheless gold in the way angles collaborate. What one missed, another caught. Ortega stacked the packet with the muscle memory of a man who has watched cases collapse on small, stupid omissions. I'll walk this to the DA's intake, he said. They'll file what we can prove clean today and add counts as we pull more. Probation holds will keep 2 in a box for now. The others will likely get cited and released with conditions. No contact, stay away, no weapons, no events. Monday, we'll ask for a temporary protective order on your behalf. You don't have to be in the room if you don't want to be, but it helps. I'll be there, Alyssa said. Norris slid a second, smaller list across the desk. Witness contact sheet, he said. Names spelled right, best numbers, whether they want to call or just email. A marked who has video. You keep copies? Ortega asked. No, Norris said. I keep habits. She keeps the copies. He jerked a thumb toward Alyssa. Alyssa held up a manila folder with the case number in bold on the tab. Inside, every printout had a twin in the incidents folder on her cloud drive. Each file title began with a date in ISO format because file names are also testimony. 2025-09-27 _fair primary _AlyssaCam.mov 2025-09-25 bar cam1 220-230 owner copy ref.taxt 2025-09-26 residence garage paint photoset.pdf. Keep that off social, Ortega said. Defense counsel loves a viral clip more than a clean record. I'm not recruiting fans, she said. Good, he said. Fans turn into noise. He excused himself long enough to walk the packet down the hall to a glass-doored office where a DA in shirt sleeves scanned the headers like a man scanning a weather map. They spoke in low tones. Alyssa didn't try to read lips. When Ortega returned, he had that mild satisfaction of a nail-set flush. Charging decisions, he said, are theirs. But preliminarily, harassment, disorderly conduct, menacing, unlawful possession of a blade at a permitted event, and, pending confirmation of your driveway photos, criminal mischief for the tires and door. DA will ask for a no-contact order ex parte. If the judge signs tonight, I'll hand-serve it at the jail and to the others upon release. That means if they get within 300 feet of your home, workplace, or person, or contact you indirectly through someone, we can pick them up for violation. What about the bar footage? Alyssa asked. It's glue, Ortega said. It makes yesterday not look like an accident. Judges like glue. He handed her a copy of the victim resource sheet, a phone tree of numbers that promise more than they deliver, but sometimes deliver enough, and a simple one-page how to save digital evidence flyer that had been photocopied so many times the clip art phone looked like it came from a museum. She didn't roll her eyes. She put both in the folder. Norris stood. You don't need me here, he said. I'll drop by the old crossing and ask the owner to post a QR for complaints and a retention notice you don't have to squint to read. People notice rules when they don't have to guess them. Ortega pointed at a laminated, no tolerance for harassment sign on a corkboard near the door. Grab a photo. Judges like to see that businesses aren't pretending this is new. Norris tipped an invisible brim and left the station the same way he'd walked into the fair, without taking the air from the room with him. Paperwork ate the next hour. Ortega printed the request for temporary restraining order and guided Alyssa through the sections that look harder than they are because they fear honest words. Describe the conduct, dates, phrases, and physical actions. List locations to be protected. Define distance. Attach exhibits by label, not emotion. She wrote, He said the following phrases to me twice in public settings. He attempted to touch and hold me without consent. I warned him I was recording. He continued. She did not speculate about gang ties or rumors or consequence. Facts only. She checked the boxes for her home, workplace, and any permitted city event as protected places. She initialed the clause that prohibited contact by third parties acting at respondent's direction. Ortega nodded when she did. That's the one that keeps jealous cousins from just asking questions. A clerk from the DA's office ran the forms across the street to the courthouse, where a judge who had already traded a Saturday golf time for case law reviewed the request and signed the temporary order with a ballpoint that never ran out of ink. The clerk skated back with a stamped copy like she was carrying soup. Ortega smiled without showing teeth when he saw the signature. Good, he said. Served orders, save us arguments. He walked the stamped order to booking where Bulldog sat smaller than he'd wanted to be, wrists cuffed in front per jail policy, jaw grinding the way men grind when the bench is plastic and reality is too. Ortega read the order aloud, slow, as if reading to someone who didn't read on his own. You are ordered to refrain from contact, direct or indirect, Ortega said. You will not come within 300 feet of Miss Morris, her home, her workplace, or city events, unless you're on public thoroughfares passing through. You will not ask others to contact her for you. You will not post about her. You will surrender any weapons when released. You will not possess any knife over 3 inches outside your home. Violate this, and you go back in cuffs and see the judge with fewer options. Bulldog's eyes flicked to the clock, then to the door, then to the wall. This is ridiculous, he muttered. Ridiculous is subjective, Ortega said. Signed orders aren't. He did the same for 2 others when they were brought from the holding tank to the desk. Each time, the words the same, the pacing the same, the recording light on the same camera blinking the same. He taped one copy to the release packet and slid the other into the court file. Lawyers like neat layers. Back at the station, the DA called to confirm initial charging decisions. 2 on probation holds will sit, Ortega reported. Others cited and released on conditions with a summons. We're attaching the order and the municipal cam retention slips to the packet. What about the bar owner? The DA asked. Cooperative, Ortega said. He's refreshing his posted policy. Norris is pushing a QR complaint system that drops directly to our portal. Might cut down on I told the bartender and nothing happened in affidavits. Better than nothing, the DA said. If defense calls with Ashi was flirting story, remind them cameras are boring. Juries love boring. They hung up. Ortega turned back to Alyssa. You'll get a call from my office Monday with a time to pick up your copy of the order. Keep it on your phone, too. If you call us and say that I have a served order and a violation, we skip steps. I understand, she said. There was no bravado in it, just comprehension. She went home through a town that was pretending not to be watching itself. The dome at her eaves blinked. She checked its feed and saw a cat cross the driveway, and a gray sedan eased down the street too slow to be natural and too fast to be suspicious, which is the speed most of life travels. She uploaded the fair video to a private link for Ortega, set sharing to view only, and wrote a 1-sentence email. Mirrors to municipal cams attached by timestamp, see 11:52, 11:56, and 12:04, 12:07. Then she put the folder on her table and didn't touch it for an hour because Sanity 2 needs chain of custody. Evening slid into town like a file cabinet closing. Alyssa drove to the old crossing at 7 because not being chased by spaces is part of not giving them away. The sign over the mirror looked new. Same words, bigger font. Beside it, a QR code with a caption, Report harassment or threats directly to police. Anonymous reports accepted. Under that, video retained 60 days. The owner had extended his memory. You print that today? She asked the bartender. This afternoon, he said, proud and embarrassed in equal measure. Guy in a hat suggested the QR. I can barely make coffee with my phone, but the kid who stocks beer made it happen. Good, she said. She tipped, and this time he didn't push a bill back. He pointed with his chin toward the corner where a slim acrylic holder sprouted pamphlets that used to look dusty even when they were new. These looked like someone had opened the box on purpose. What to do if you're harassed in a business, saving video evidence. How to ask staff for help without making it worse. Gonna cost me some regulars, the bartender said. He didn't sound sorry. You'll make better ones, she said. He snorted. I'll make quieter ones. When she left, Norris was not in the room, which meant he was where he always was when you didn't see him, doing a thing that would be obvious later. She found proof in her inbox at 9, a short, clean email from the community coordinator. Rec room confirmed Saturday, 10 o'clock, 11:30. We have mats and cones. Liability waiver attached. A second email from Ortega. Temporary order served. 3. Prelim set for Tuesday. Don't engage online. If you get contact, forward and archive. A third, from an address she didn't recognize at first. Harlan posted your orange line photos on her staff board. Hope you don't mind. Guys remember better with pictures. She didn't mind. She slept badly and woke useful. Sunday was errands and quiet and the small domestic labor that keeps your mind from rusting. She bought 2 dry erase boards, one for the rec room, one for her kitchen. Boundaries, witnesses, recording. She printed a 1-page handout that didn't promise magic. Exit early. Use your voice. Name the behavior. Put it on the record. Move to witnesses. Call when you can win. She wrote self-defense fight in letters big enough for people to see from the back row. At noon, her phone buzzed with a number she didn't know. She let it go to voicemail. Transcription caught. Drop this. We can talk. She screenshotted, emailed it to Ortega with the subject potential indirect contact and the body unknown number, likely third party. Not returning call. He replied with good, keep pattern. She did. Monday brought the courthouse smell. Copy toner, stale coffee, carpet that tried to be neutral and failed. The DA's office ran its morning docket, and hers was one of many. She met a junior prosecutor who looked 12 and knew the forms cold. He had a tablet with a folder named Morris and said, Your Honor, without swallowing his tongue. Across the aisle, a defense attorney in a suit that said volume practice whispered into the ears of men who looked more tired than dangerous, which is a mask danger wears in buildings with ceilings like this. The judge called the room to attention and waded through the list. When it was their turn, the prosecutor stood, gave the court the bones, and did not try to make them sing. Harassment, menacing, disorderly conduct, prohibited blade at a permitted event, he said. We have video from multiple angles, municipal cams retained, and prior related incidents under investigation. State requests the temporary protective order be continued with stay-away conditions as a term of release for those not held on probation. No weapons, no alcohol establishments after 10 p.m. He handed up the tan envelope copy and a 1-page exhibit list. Chain of custody attached. Defense tried the lines everyone tries. Mutual combat, he said. Words, not crimes. My clients are employed, well, some of them, and have ties to the community. We don't need to ruin lives over a misunderstanding. Then stop misunderstanding people in public, the judge said without looking up from the order. Protective order is continued. Conditions as requested. Those on probation are remanded pending violation hearings. Others are released on their own recognizance with conditions. Next. Gavel? No. Just a pen tap. Court moved the way river water moves around rocks that don't know they're polished by it. Outside in the hall, the defense attorney tried a softer tack with Alyssa he thought might sound like reason. You seem sensible, he said. Sometimes these things get bigger than they need to be. If we could just... Counsel, the junior prosecutor said gently, stepping between, not touching anyone. All communications go through our office. She's represented by the people right now. Don't contact her again. The attorney lifted both hands and made a face that he'd been practicing since law school. Just being neighborly. Be neighborly and writing to me, the prosecutor said. We'll print it. Alyssa didn't add anything. She kept her folder in her hands and her voice unused. Her phone vibrated with a text from Ortega. You did fine. This is the Boren middle. Boren is winning. At the old crossing that evening, the zero tolerance sign had sprouted a second line in the smaller print. Staff will call police if policy is violated. A QR code at the bottom led to a page that asked 5 questions and offered a text box. Alyssa scanned it and filled out a dummy report to test, writing, This is a test of the system. Please ignore. A minute later, Ortega's auto-reply came back with a case number and a human note under it. Got it. Ignore we shall. Good sign works. Harlan texted her a photo of a bright orange paint can. We painted the line inside, too. Break room and bay. Guys are into it. She texted back a thumbs up and saved the image to incidents. Allies, because allies are evidence as much as threats are. The week arranged itself around phone calls and small choices. The DA sent a scheduling notice for a pre-trial conference. A probation officer called to ask if Alyssa would provide a victim impact statement for the violation hearing. She said she'd send one page by Friday. She sat at her table, wrote exactly one page, and erased 3 extra sentences that made sense to her feelings and no sense to statute. Norris reappeared without announcement like a dependable bus. He brought a stack of blank witness forms and a roll of gaffer tape. "Matt's in the rec room slip," he said by way of hello. "Tape the corners." "I appreciate your commitment to adhesive," she said. "I appreciate not watching people get hurt by floors," he said. He set a small portable speaker on the table. "And since we're doing literacy, bring your own sound. Room PA hums like a bee." She clipped her hair back, stood in her kitchen, and practiced the sentences she'd say Saturday until they sounded like instructions, not ideology. Name what's happening. Anchor yourself where cameras see you. Give a clear warning. Move toward witnesses. Leave before you win. If you must lay hands, do it to stop and leave, not to punish. She wrote them on the board. She erased the part that sounded like a TED Talk and left the part that sounded like a checklist. That night, a car idled near the end of her block a beat too long. The dome's microphone caught the bass of an engine and nothing else. It filed the noise into the 30-day pile where it would sit until it mattered or didn't. Alyssa watched the stale glow of the porch light on the concrete and reminded herself that fear likes drama and the camera liked timestamps, and those two facts could live in the same house without breaking things. Tuesday morning, Ortega emailed, "Fair vendor uploads totaled 26, municipal cams clear, DA happy." Then, 5 minutes later, defense filed a boilerplate motion to preserve defendant's social media. "We'll serve the platform. Sometimes they post their own crimes to help us." He added a smile no emoji could improve. Wednesday, the bar owner texted a photo of his mirror. The surveillance retention. 60 days sign now laminated and straight. Alyssa replied with "looks good." He replied with a receipt. Printer ink, $34. She laughed and sent him half on a payment app. He tried to refuse. She wrote, "Keep the sign straight." He sent a photo of a tiny level sitting on the frame. Thursday, the probation officer emailed, "Violation hearing set. Videos admitted by stipulation. Thank you for your statement. No fanfare. No high five. Just a sentence." Friday, the junior prosecutor called from a hallway with bad reception. "No plea yet," he said. "Defense is still pretending the knife wasn't a knife. We'll bring the actual knife. Also, heads up, you may get friend requests from accounts with no posts. Don't accept. Screenshot and forward." "Already happening," Alyssa said. "I forward. Ortega says good." "You're making our lives easy," he said. "That's rare." "I'm making my life survivable," she said. "Yours is collateral convenience." He laughed more than the joke deserved. "See you at the next thing." The chapter of her week that wasn't paper was quiet because she and the town insisted on it. She answered 2 customer emails about bracelets, wrote a short invoice for a fleet oil change Harlan forgot to bill in August, and replaced the batteries in the recorder's UPS because boring victories are still victories. On the fridge, the dry erase board had one line in capital letters that didn't drift: boundaries, witnesses, recording. It wasn't a motto so much as instructions on how to be a person in public where other people fail at it. Saturday at 10 would be the class: mats, cones, tape, mundane sentences dressed as tools. She laid her handouts in a neat stack and put a piece of gaffer tape on the spine so they wouldn't explode if someone brushed the pile. She did not think about who would come. She thought about where they would stand and what they would be able to say when the worst idea in the room tried to make itself the script again. She set her folder on the chair by the door with her keys and a note stuck to the cover. Case hash, order copy, charger, granola bar. Then she turned off the light. Procedure had not made her safer in a way you could wear like a jacket. It had made the next choice clearer and the next lie harder to tell. That's what literacy does. It doesn't end a story. It stops it from being written for you. Outside, the dome blinked its steady pulse. Somewhere across town, a man in a vest read a sheet with conditions and hated every word without understanding any of them. Somewhere else, a judge drank lukewarm coffee and signed 3 orders no one would thank her for. The bar owner straightened the laminated sign one more time. Sergeant Ortega closed a file drawer and opened an email with a subject line that would become a number. The week pivoted on its hinge. The noisy parts had been loud enough. The next part would be quieter on purpose. Saturday at 9:50 a.m., the rec room smelled like dust and citrus cleaner. Mats were down, corners taped with gaffers so nothing slid. Cones marked lanes like a quiet traffic plan. On the whiteboard, block letters, boundaries, witnesses, recording. Alyssa checked the door twice, the habit stuck, and faced the handful of people turning into a crowd. Bar staff in black shirts, 2 nurses in scrubs, a delivery driver with knees that had too many stairs in them, a librarian, a bartender from a different place than the old crossing, the park security lead in a city polo. Harlan's 2 techs stood side by side, hands already grease-stained from a morning tire. At the back, Sergeant Ortega in plain clothes took a folding chair and a paper cup without announcing a title. Near him, the man in the checkered shirt and hat set a portable speaker on a table, switched it on, and turned the volume just high enough to beat the room's hum. Alyssa clicked the marker lid shut. "Thanks for coming. This isn't a fight class," she said. "It's a leaving class. Our goal is to get you out early. If you can't get out, our goal is to get you out at the first safe moment. Everything we do today has to make sense to a camera and to a judge who will see that camera." She held up an index card with 3 lines in thick pen. "Name it. Warn it. Move." She pointed to the board. "The mnemonic is for your mouth and your feet." She walked to a strip of tape on the floor. "This is your boundary. Imagine it's that orange line on the shop floor, the front edge of a bar, or the lip of a booth. First tool is voice." She nodded to a volunteer, the bartender from the old crossing. "Joe's going to play the person who's crowding your space." Joe shuffled forward, gamely uncomfortable. "Hey there. Smile. Don't be like that." "For the record," Alyssa said, at normal volume, palms visible, feet square, "you're too close. Step back." She turned her head a half-inch to an imaginary lens. "I'm on private property. I'm asking you to stop." Joe stopped because he'd been asked in a way that made the request about the room, not his ego. "Step 2, Alyssa said, is a warning to the tape. Neutral, not dramatic." She faced him again, dropped her center of gravity a hair. "Do not cross the line." She nodded to the cones. "Next tool is movement. Sidestep, not backpedal. You want cameras and witnesses. Don't retreat into corners you can't leave." She moved 2 steps left so that the imaginary dome above the door had both faces in frame. "If you can exit, exit. If you can't, hold the space until help arrives." The librarian raised a hand. "What if the person says something that isn't technically a threat, just gross?" "Name it anyway," Alyssa said. "You're building a record of unwanted contact. For the record, you said X. I asked you to stop. I'm leaving now. Cameras can't read your mind. Give them words." She had them pair off with consent. No surprises, no grabbing, and walked them through stances that didn't scream karate, just made falling less likely. "Your feet aren't a speech," she said, nudging a heel an inch. "They're a policy." She showed a simple wrist peel for when someone tried to take an arm, a clean palm frame that kept chests from touching without turning into a shove. "These are exits, not wins. If you feel like you've won, you stayed too long. When they reach the part no one wants and everyone needs, the moment a hand lands without consent, she kept the tools boring and exact. If you must touch, touch to stop. Control the hand, control the elbow, step through the space they thought was theirs, and let gravity do the rest." She demoed the same 2-beat she had used on Bulldog, slow enough to see the angles. "You are not punishing," she said. "You are ending. Then you leave." Norris raised the chair he'd brought like a prop and didn't make it one. "Furniture is a tool," he said, voice calm. "It makes distance obvious. Chair between chest and chest." He said it and leaned, not to crush but to occupy. "You're sending a message to the room. This is not your aisle anymore." A nurse with a shy smile tried the move and found the angle where the chair did more work than her arms. "I could do that," she said, surprised. "That's the point," Alyssa said. "This is not a talent show. It's a checklist you can do when you're tired, scared, and mad." They rehearsed lines out loud. It sounded ridiculous for the first 3 minutes, and then not ridiculous at all. People found their tone, the one that doesn't beg, doesn't escalate, just puts a line down and points the camera at it. For the record, step back. Do not cross the line. I'm leaving. Call 911. Ortega took a turn at the board without introducing himself as anything but Jay. He wrote what helps us and put 3 bullets underneath. Dates, times, exact phrases, where you were when you said the warning. I can build a case out of those 3. Give me those 3 and some video, and we don't need to be brilliant. Brilliant breaks, boring holds. Hands went up. When does the warning stop being safe? If I say, for the record, won't that make them mad? What if staff tells me not to film? Ortega and Alyssa traded answers like passing a wrench. If the person is already making you physically unsafe, don't deliver speeches, he said. Get out and call. But if you can give me 1 clean sentence on tape, it changes what the next 2 months look like. Alyssa added, You don't need permission to narrate your own boundary. If staff tells you not to film, narrate that too, and ask for a manager. They ended on the floor with a 10-minute drill. 3 stations, each a low-stakes problem. At Station 1, you practiced naming a behavior and walking sideways to a witness. Mara with a clipboard. At Station 2, you used a chair. At Station 3, you peeled a hand off your bag strap without turning it into a tug-of-war. No one got flashy. No one needed to. When the 90 minutes were over, people stayed to pack mats the way people stay to wrap cables after a good show. The security lead signed up for 2 more sessions. The librarian asked if Alyssa would bring a shortened version for staff in the evening. Harlan's text took a photo of the whiteboard and made it their phone lock screens. Joe stuck the zero-tolerance card back to the inside of his apron pocket and tapped it like talisman. Norris gathered the cones, coiling tape on his palm. He didn't give a speech. He said, "That'll do," which, from him, meant it had done exactly what it needed to. The rest unfolded in the less cinematic order that actually works. On Monday, the protective order was extended for a year. The judge didn't make a sermon of it. She quoted the statute and moved on. 2 of Bulldog's men went straight from violation hearing to county time. 90 days on old paper the camera had made impossible to dodge. Bulldog pled to a stack of misdemeanors and took fines, community service, no contact, and a long leash labeled probation that would tighten on the slightest tug. The Blade case stuck. The fair's sign and the municipal rule book did more lifting than any adjective. The DA didn't hold a press conference. Ortega didn't either. A bland notice appeared on the city site. Charges filed related to incident at Town Square. Conditions of release include stay-away orders. It linked to nothing viral and everything boring. How to request footage, how to submit a report, the number for non-emergency. Boring won again. Businesses adjusted in practical ways. The old crossing kept the laminated sign and added a second camera to cover the dark pocket by the jukebox. The owner started a 5-minute routine for new hires. Here's the policy. Here's where the sign-in sheet for witnesses lives. Here's what you say on the phone. Here's the QR. He moved a short stool to a place where it could become a chair at a moment's notice. Another bar copied all of that, but Tuesday afternoon, cutting and pasting the words because invention wasn't the point. Harlan painted a small orange square at the service desk. Stand here to be helped, and trained it into the crew. If someone stepped past it, you named it and pointed to the square. A bakery drew a tape line between the counter and the queue and found the room more polite without making Facebook posts about it. The farmer's market added no filming minors without permission to the rules signs at the same time they wrote area under surveillance, retained 30 days in larger font. The librarian invited Alyssa. The nurses brought co-workers. The delivery driver told 2 friends who worked late shifts at a convenience store where the cameras used to be there for show and now were wired to something. None of that made the town good. It made the town attentive. Predators do worse in attentive light. On a Thursday night, the old crossing felt like a bar that had decided to be a bar on purpose. The mirror sign was level. The QR code worked. Alyssa sat at the same place as the first night with a seltzer and lemon, elbows in, the posture of someone who would very much like to be just a woman at a bar and had done the paperwork to earn it. Joe slid a coaster across without commentary. Two regulars argued about baseball in a way that didn't turn into anything else. A woman in a denim jacket stopped halfway by and said, "I was at the fair. Thanks." She didn't ask for a story. Alyssa didn't give one. The woman moved on, leaving a 5 under a tip jar with a crooked thank you sign taped to it. Joe pretended not to see and then did see on purpose. Norris wasn't in the room, which meant he was likely where the chairs were, rec room, library, church basement, being the kind of witness who teaches the room to be its own witness. Alyssa found him 2 days later at the back of a second class, hat on his knee, listening while a teenager in a grocery vest said out loud for the first time, "For the record, I asked you to stop," and meant it the second time more than the first. After class, he helped roll mats and didn't let anyone thank him too much. "The point is, you can do it without me," he said, checking the tape at the corners as if being sure the floor behaved was a moral duty. "If I'm in the story, it's the wrong story." "Noted," Alyssa said. He nodded at the board. The words hadn't changed. "Keep that simple," he said. "I plan to," she said. "Complexity is how people lose." Fall edged in. The fair posters came down and the Halloween ones went up. The town had a longer memory than it had in spring. Ortega's emails got shorter because there was less to say. The DA sent her a one-line update, guilty pleas entered, review date set for compliance. Harlan texted a photo of a fresh orange line repainted by a new kid who had made it too straight. The bar owner adjusted the sign by a millimeter and sent a picture of a level bubble once again, dead center. Small maintenance beat big gestures because big gestures invite applause and then die. Maintenance just keeps working. One night Alyssa stood in her kitchen and read back through her incidents folder, not because she needed to be angry again, but because she wanted to check the shape of what they had built. Wide shots, close-ups, stupid red paint that had taken 2 passes to scrub down, a voicemail that transcribed into cowardice, a knife on concrete, a script that failed in public and did not get a sequel. She closed the laptop and wrote the 3 words on the home board again, not because the ink had faded, but because ritual is also evidence. Boundaries, witnesses, recording. At the old crossing, someone had scratched a heart into the table back before any of this started, and then, later, someone else had sanded it out and stained over the lighter wood. You could still see the ghost if you knew where to look. That's how towns are. They don't forget what you wish they would. They absorb it and make the next day run anyway. On a quiet Friday, Ortega stopped by the bar in an off-duty shirt and paid cash for a burger he didn't have time to finish. He tapped the sign with the back of his knuckle on his way out, like a man checking his own work. Joe tapped it too, and then pretended he hadn't. Alyssa lifted her glass at no one in particular and drank cold carbonation that tasted like ordinary. Ordinary has value when you've had to buy it. As she left, the parking lot was the same boring rectangle it had always been. Her car's dome LED blinked at home whether she looked at it or not. She didn't linger in the doorway the way she had that first week. She didn't check the mirror twice. She looked once, saw what she needed to see, and moved on. Predators hadn't left town. They rarely do, but they had to work harder to be themselves. They had to find darker corners, and there were fewer of those. A chair was a chair until it had to be a barrier. A line of tape was an art project until it became a boundary. A phone was a toy until a sentence made it a witness. Those weren't dramatic victories. They were procedural ones. They counted because they kept counting. Alyssa put the handouts for the next class in her bag, 10 more copies, each with the same 3 lines at the top. She set the bag by the door with her keys and one last note because habits make their own luck. Case hash, order copy, charger, granola bar. She didn't need the case number for anything today. It was there anyway, like a street light that made a sidewalk possible. She turned off the kitchen light. In the dark, the whiteboard letters glowed with whatever light leaks through the blinds at night. She didn't read them again. She didn't have to. Outside, the town's cameras blinked their indifferent metronome. Inside, a woman who had learned how to let cameras work for her slept. Somewhere, a man under conditions kept his distance, not because he had grown a conscience, but because he had met a system that finally meant what it said. The scenario here was different now. Not fixed, not heroic. Different enough. End of Part 1. Part 2 drops tomorrow. Things escalate fast. Subscribe, turn on notifications, hit like, and comment, ready for Part 2.